Hey guys, um, it is Suicide Prevention Month, so I just wanted to take a few moments to talk about suicide. It's something that people are uncomfortable talking about, and I'm fully aware of that. I certainly was uncomfortable talking about it for most of my life until my father's depression culminated in suicide about 4.5 years ago. Before that, my only frame of reference for suicide was a priest in my childhood parish. Growing up, I was raised Catholic, and um, a priest in our parish committed suicide. And it was somehow linked to child abuse. I don't really know the details of it, but I didn't consider it much when I was in school as a kid. But this was my only frame of reference whenever suicide came up. And so, as I got older, high school, college, I just always considered suicide to be um, related to guilt. Somebody did something wrong, they felt bad, and so this was their way out. Um, but when my father, about 5.5 years ago, when the bout of depression, um, the clinical bout of depression hit and consumed him, I was very close with him that last year of his life. I went to his doctor's appointments with him. Pretty much saw him on a daily basis, had a lot of conversations with him. And I had a first-hand, front row seat view to to this mental illness, to this disease just overtaking his brain. I saw the stark contrast between this joyful, loving, kind man who was joyful, loving, and kind to every single person that he ever met in his life. This contrast between that man and this ugly disease, this brain disease, it changed everything for me. It was an education. It was enlightening for me because not only did it change just my perspective of mental illness and suicide in general, but it changed my perspective on myself. I had lived with what I'd considered just to be shyness, painful shyness, from high school into my mid-30s. And I had spent a tremendous amount of effort and energy hiding this shyness from everyone. I did everything I could to avoid social situations. And if I was forced into them, like if I was forced to go to school, high school or college, I did everything I could to hide it. And I think I did a pretty good job of it. Once I got to college, I really leaned on drinking a lot to kind of quell my social anxiety. But it ruled my life, and I didn't even consider it to be an illness or something that I could heal or care for. I considered it to be a character flaw, a weakness in myself. And so, as a weakness, I just hid it from the world, and I hid it from myself. I just didn't have the education, the understanding to properly care for it, to properly care for myself. But after witnessing my dad struggle firsthand, I just had my entire worldview changed, my entire view of myself, on mental illness and suicide in general. And so, if there's one thing I can impart to anyone who's listening, it's that suicide is not a choice. It's not a conscious choice that the individual is making. It is a brain disease. It is the entire perspective on life, on reality, is askew. It's not the person, the heart making that decision. It's the filter through which the world is viewed. The brain is so narrow. The viewpoint of the world is so narrow. My dad, I couldn't even convince him of the most obvious things. He was convinced that financial ruin was imminent. And I would show him a bank statement with plenty of money, business prospects, billables. He couldn't see it, and he wanted to see it. Like his heart wanted to see it, but his brain just wouldn't let him see it. And he had spent his life not really honoring his mental illness. Just as me, he considered it a weakness, and so he hid about it. He never really talked about it. He only talked about it with me when he was in his that last year of his life, in that final bout of depression. So if there's any understanding I could impart to anyone, it's that there isn't much of a choice involved in suicide. It is a brain disease, and it can be helped to heal, and coping mechanisms are possible. For me and for so many people, meditation is the answer. My experience of social anxiety has completely changed. My experience of depression has completely changed. I wouldn't even consider myself a shy person anymore. I've spent so much energy and time to hide my shyness from the world, whether it was just avoiding situations or drinking my way through certain situations, or just kind of controlling the variables in the situations. I spent all that energy before, whereas now I spend that energy really just meditating, honoring my social anxiety, my depressive tendencies, and all that effort and energy in meditation and mindfulness has helped me heal. And now I can go into, I think, pretty much any social situation and feel just as at ease as I do at home. Meditation is a beautiful thing, and there's no doubt in my mind that had my father been introduced to it earlier in his life, his mental illness would have run a very different course. But it didn't happen that way, and for me it took his struggle to really wake me up and to give me the appropriate understanding of what mental illness and suicide are. And so that I hope that in some way I can help impact other people's understanding of what mental illness is, and what suicide is, and that maybe you might consider meditation for yourself or for a loved one. It is a tremendous healing practice. You can certainly take my word for it, but the science behind it is nothing short of compelling. Literally, meditation will change the structure of your brain. It will change the chemicals released in your brain, and your entire worldview will just open up and broaden. Sometimes our brain becomes, the neural pathways and just our perspective on life becomes so closed, and we have such a narrow view on life, like my father did that last year of his life, and like I did for 15 years anytime a social situation came up. But now my perspective is just wide open, and I think meditation just really allows for a greater capacity for understanding, a broader capacity for understanding of yourself and for those around you. And certainly meditation leads to a greater and greater ability to love yourself and to love yourself unconditionally. So I thank you guys for listening. Thank you.